In lesson 14.2, you're going to play a game of rock, paper, scissors, and we want to know, is this game a fair game? Now we're going to change up the rules a little bit for rock, paper, scissors. So you are going to play this in a group of 3. So if you're playing at home, you can play with siblings or mom or dad. If you're playing it with other people that are in your class, you can, play through Google Meet or Zoom or something like that. But anyway, here's how we're going to modify the rules. All players are going to play rock, paper, scissors at the same time, and they're on the count of 3. Each student is either going to show one of the following symbols: rock by showing a fist, paper by showing a flat hand, or scissors by showing 2 fingers in the scissor shape. You're probably familiar with how rock, paper, scissors works. We're going to change then how the game is scored because you're playing with 3 people. And before you start, by the way, one player has to be player A, one player has to be player B, and one player has to be player C. So you can decide amongst yourselves who's going to be which player. Now, this is how the game is scored. If all 3 players make the same hand shape, player A gets a point. So that means all 3 players throw rock, or all 3 players throw scissors. If all 3 players make a different hand shape, then player B gets a point. So that means 1 rock, 1 paper, 1 scissors. It doesn't matter who throws what. If all 3 players make a different hand shape, player B gets a point. Now, if you have the case where 2 make the same hand shape and 1 is different, then player C gets the point. So that might be 2 rocks and 1 scissors, or it could be 2 paper and 1 rock. And again, it doesn't matter who throws what. If it's 2 and 1, player C gets the point. I'd like you to play the game 15 times, or maybe you could even play more than that if it goes pretty quickly, and tally the results in the table that's in your notes. Now, after a while, you may start to notice that this game doesn't seem to be fair. And so you can answer question number 1 there. But basically, you might be noticing as this game goes on that player C seems to win a lot more than player A and B. In fact, you may have noticed that player A doesn't really win all that often. And as you play more and more games, you'll notice that this difference becomes even greater. And so if you wanted to win this game, you would probably want to choose to be player C. So we want to know if we can figure out what is the chance that either player A or B or C wins the game, and why does player C seem to have an advantage. So again, player C is the one you would choose to be. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through very systematically, and we're going to figure out all of the different ways that this game could be played. And we're going to start with player A. So we're going to figure out, how can player A win this game? Player A, remember, gets a point only if all 3 players make the same hand shape. So for example, if player A throws rock, player B throws rock, and player C throws rock, then that's a win for player A. Are there other ways that player A could win? Well, of course, we could have player A wins if everybody throws paper or if everybody throws scissors. So altogether, there are 3 ways for player A to win because we have 3 outcomes there. And by the way, this grouping right here constitutes 1 outcome, right? Because those are the 3 different shapes that each of the players could throw. So that's 1 way, the second row is another way, and the third is the third way. So 3 ways for player A to win. Now let's look at all the ways that player B could win. And what would probably be a good idea at this point is if you pause this video and see if you can write down all of the possible ways for player B to get a point. Remember that player B gets a point if all 3 players make different hand shapes. So as an example, player A could throw rock, player B could throw paper, and player C could throw scissors. Or player A could throw rock, B could throw scissors, and C could throw paper. So right there we have 2 different ways that player B could win. So again, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can come up with the other ways that player B could get a win in this game. All right, now the other ways that player B could get a win would be if A throws paper, B throws rock, C throws scissors, or A throws paper, B scissors, C rock. And then we have a couple more alternatives because right now we've just looked at the case where A throws rock, A throws paper. We could also have A throws scissors. So I did scissors, rock, paper, scissors, paper, rock. So I tried to be sort of systematic about the way that I was listing these, starting with, for example, player A throwing 1 shape and then looking at the other variations for player B and C. Anyway, when we list all those, notice that altogether we have 6 ways for player B to win. So already player B has a good advantage over player A because they have twice as many ways to win. Well, what about player C? How many ways could player C win? And you have this long chart in your notes, which might give you some indication that there are a lot of different ways. Remember that player C gets a point if we have 2 of one and 1 of another, but they can be in any order. So we have to think very carefully about the number of ways that we could get a win for player C. I did, first of all, looking at the situation where one player threw rock and the other 2 threw paper. So I did rock, paper, 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 rock, paper, 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 rock. So that's 3 ways. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to stick with those same 2 shapes, but instead of 1 rock, 2 paper, I'm going to do 2 rocks, 1 paper. So I looked at all the different ways that I could scramble those up. So I had rock, rock, paper, rock, paper, rock, paper, rock, rock. Now you're going to repeat that same process, but you have to do it for the other shapes. So for example, we could also do rock and scissors, and we could do paper and scissors. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can kind of follow that same pattern and list all of the different possibilities. All right, here are the other ones. Here are the combinations with 1 rock and 2 scissors. Here are the combinations with 2 rocks, 1 scissors. Now I'm going to do the same thing for scissors and paper. So here I did 1 scissors, 2 paper. And here I have 2 scissors, 1 paper. So that's a lot of combinations. And when we count all those up, there are a total of 18 ways for player C to win. So it's no wonder that when you were playing this at home or with your classmates, player C won a lot more times than either A or B did. Now, there are a total of 27 outcomes in this game because we had 3 ways for player A to win, 6 for B, 18 for C. And we can then figure out our probabilities based on that. So for player A, they would only win on 3 of the 27 outcomes. Player B will win on 6 of the 27 outcomes. And player C wins on 18 of the 27 outcomes. So much greater chance of player C winning than either of the other 2. Now let's interpret the probability of player A winning. 3 out of 27 is about 11%. So we could say if they played many, many games, player A will win about 11% of the time. And that's going back to the definition of probability that we learned in lesson 14.1. All right, you have a homework assignment for tonight in your assignment packet, and that will cover lesson 14.1 and 14.2.